Building a strong board of directors for a nonprofit organization. Counseling 516, Dr. Melissa Naslund, Union Institute and University, Kathy Lane, April 22nd, 2018. The importance of a solid working board of directors. There are some fundamental points that individuals need to be aware of when joining a nonprofit charitable organization and the responsibilities that will be taken on. The bottom line in the business world, the bottom line profit is what is placed as being most important, regardless of whether the business promotes a dual bottom line of social responsibility and profit is most important. An example of this is Ben & Jerry's ice cream business here in Vermont. This business is famously known throughout the world for their social advocacy. For a nonprofit charity, the bottom line is the services that are delivered to benefit the public. Examples of this are the local food shelf, a homeless shelter, public health promotion. Each of the members of a board of directors for a nonprofit are responsible to do their part in determining what that public benefit is, how to deliver it, and how best to evaluate the performance. As a board member, the individual needs to understand one will be expected to make sacrifices for the common good in the name of service. Those that work within the organization function under the mantra of making do with less. These organizations usually have low overhead costs with nominally paid staff and volunteer leadership. Often these individuals are limited in experience in nonprofit management and the development of resources, yet they are expected to operate just as efficiently and effectively as larger professionally staffed organizations. Nonprofits are held accountable to their community to provide the stated services and goods. Those in the community who are stakeholders, like consumers or funders or politicians, expect to have a say in the functioning of that entity. Often the organization is dependent on the public generosity for a very large portion of their operating revenue. As a member of the board, you need to ensure that the community understands and supports the actions of the board. The risk is not only losing their goodwill, but their continued financial support. An example of this is each year, a member of the board of directors or the director of operations of an organization must provide a presentation at the town meeting prior to the town vote. And the information will show what services will be provided by the organization to the community. And these would be the services that the town people have they pay in their taxes for. So reliance on volunteers, decisions and actions made by the board are dependent on a limited staff of volunteers to do most, if not all, of the work of the organization. Decisions such as where to dedicate resources or what community needs should be focused on first, and what strategies should be used or are done by the volunteers, the staff, and the board. As a board member, you'll be working with a crew of people with varied levels of skills, expertise, and experience. Their priority over the volunteer commitments is that of their family and jobs. So those who say they will volunteer do not always fulfill or cannot always fulfill that commitment and may leave the organization shorthanded. So managing these volunteers can be very challenging. Regardless of the organization still needs to accomplish the assigned tasks to be successful. The nonprofit still must maintain the business acumen, effective operations, and quality research and information for good decision making. It must have ethical behavior, accountability to maintain good public will, and it needs structures, systems, people, and skills, strategy, and self-reflection that are essential elements to the organization's success. How the board of directors functions. It is important that all organizations have a strong organizational structure. It is through the board of directors that the structure is built and maintained. The individuals that comprise the board of directors are the governing body and responsible for overseeing the organization's activities. At a minimum, there must be an annual meeting in which all the members of the board must be present. Generally, though, meetings are held monthly to discuss issues, make decisions, or vote on pertinent issues for the organization. The ultimate purpose of a board is to focus on the organizational mission, strategy, and goals. Ideally, the paid managerial staff should be separate from the board members, and they're responsible for carrying out the tasks required to support the mission. As a rule, the positions held on the board are 2 to 5 years. The best practice is to find individuals that are from within the community, and these people should have like passions and experiences that align with the mission of the nonprofit. Any individual can become a board member. However, there are guidelines that help public charities avoid placing anyone in a position of control that could profit from the use of the organization's assets or income for personal gain. From among the board members, officers are chosen that have a higher level of responsibility, and these typical positions are president, secretary, and treasurer. Like the board members, the officers usually serve for a specified length of time. The role in terms of the officers should be clearly outlined in the organization's bylaws. These roles are the president, and he or she is responsible to head up the board, supervising all the business and affairs of the board. While it is possible that for the president to hold the position of a CEO in the organization, he can't receive pay to hold that officer's position. Secretary maintains the minutes of the board of directors and is responsible for tracking the organization's activities. This is done to ensure the organization's actions agree with what is written in their bylaws. It is also the responsibility of the secretary to maintain up-to-date contact information in order to inform the board of any meetings or updates on the organization. The treasurer has a responsibility of keeping account of receipts and payments in the organization's books. They're responsible for keeping track of the organization's overall financial condition. The importance of this role is to keep the other officers and members abreast of the financial stability of the organization. Areas that are a potential conflict. The board of directors generally meets once a month, and during the time between, it can become easy for other issues to pop up or old issues require being put on the back burner. Some of the following are pitfalls a board must guard against. Losing sight of the mission. The most important thing for a board to keep in focus is the mission statement of the organization. At each meeting, it needs to be kept central so that the board does not lose focus of their organization's true purpose. An example of this is a pantry accepting grant funds to build a playground on the premises. Complacency of the board members it's crucial to an organization to have the participation of its board members. Their lack of participation by routinely missing meetings and not becoming involved in discussions and failure to complete assignments all qualify as complacency and is detrimental to the organization. An example is a board member who doesn't understand how to analyze financial statements or the implications, doesn't ask questions to help himself understand, and then votes with the majority. Misguided motivations, members who do not place the need of the organization ahead of their own personal preferences. This could affect their decision-making process and place the organization in a secondary role. The decisions made could be a result of misguided or unethical motivations, undeclared conflicts of interest, and the pursuit of personal benefit that might endanger the organization's tax-exempt status. An example of this is hiring an out-of-work family member who's not necessarily qualified for a paid position within the organization. Um, the board is governed by group decisions formed through deliberation. Each individual member is bound by the collective decision. Anyone with a different opinion must resolve it within the confines of the boardroom. If they object to a decision or a point of view, they should not share it with the public or media. An example is a disgruntled board member seeking outside support for his or her defeated solution to an issue. After the board fulfills their duty by hiring a director of daily operations for the organization, it's assumed that the new director was hired based on his or her abilities to perform the tasks that were outlined in the job description. And then there is a performance evaluation process that's put in place. Therefore, the board's job now is to oversee the organization is run well. However, it's not to interfere with the director's daily duties. An example is the board decides the best use of the volunteer time and duties that they are to perform on a daily basis. A successful board accepts and thrives on change, and stagnation may occur if there are no term limits. It is necessary to have new perspectives and differing ideas to keep a board and the organization in a forward direction. An example of this is the board is dwindled to 5 members who've been the core members over 10 years. They control the dynamics of the decision-making process of the organization, and they haven't sought out any new members that could add new ideas and information. Organizations that are non-profit tax exempt must follow laws from the federal and state government, local regulations, as well as their own bylaws. The board is responsible to ensure that all of these laws are being respected. They must ensure that the organization files its Form 990 in a correct and timely manner, that all the employment taxes are withheld and paid, and that these official documents are saved appropriately. Failure to oversee these regulations and the creation of appropriate policies might result in liability of wrongdoing. An example of this is director or CEO does not pay the payroll taxes for a few months because of a financial crunch. The board is not aware that this is happening, yet they're liable. Unless the board assesses its own performance, behavior, and their shared impressions and analyzes the results, they will not be able to determine areas in need of self-improvement. Without this assessment, they are unable to define their strengths and weaknesses. A byproduct of this self-assessment may help to build team spirit, board accountability, and its credibility with funders and the community. Attendance at board meetings is not consistent. An example is attendance at a board meetings is not consistent, ideas are not discussed, or are discussed, yet there is not follow through to gather information to base decisions on. The team has low morale, they're not supporting each other, and not much is accomplished at the monthly meetings. And the organization suffers because of this. During the self-assessment process, if a board does not address its own apparent weaknesses and work towards structured better self-betterment, there will not be self-improvement. Boards need to provide learning possibilities for members and utilize their members' capabilities efficiently and effectively. An example of that is board members who are not familiar with individual job descriptions of their organization and are not familiar with the legal implications, obligations. In 501c3 organizations, asking for and giving donations is part of being a board member in these charities. One true test of commitment for a board member is their personal contribution rate. Since boards are responsible for fundraising, how can they convince others to donate if they themselves fail to make this ultimate commitment? Contributions also come in the form of time. A board member is willing to commit to those fundraising activities. An example is a board does not have a personal contribution policy, so no one member makes contributions, and none of the members show up to participate or work at a fundraising event. Consulting plan, finding the right board members. Board members do not see to the day-to-day operations. Their positions are to provide foresight, oversight, and insight. The members are stewards and advocates of the mission of the nonprofit organization and do fundraising as well. Finding individuals who would best suit the organization in carrying out its mission should take great consideration and care. The consultant recommendations are as followed. Define what the board should look like, which means identifying the capabilities needed in the board. These might be in the form of specific professional skills, such as financial management or human resource expertise. It might be knowledge of the community and the people that the organization serves, or the board may need to reflect the social and cultural diversity of its organization itself. Prior to any search beginning for new members, it is important to look at the organization and the people it serves. Determine how the current board measures up. Within the ranks of its members, the current board should have open, honest, and ongoing discussions about the makeup of the board. They should question how well it meets the defined needs of the organization. Those discussions may very well result in some members leaving the board. The first step should be to establish that the organization has bylaws that determine how long a board member should serve. If not, they need to be created. Each year, every member needs to be evaluated to ensure that they have performed as expected. Establishing a nominating committee that reflects the board's strength. The committee should be made up of board members most committed. They should be able and willing to meet for weekly progress calls, participate actively in the search and interview process. The executive director of the board does not need to be an active member of the committee. However, he should keep the committee on track and aligned with the priorities of the board. Make sure the prospective board members understand any fundraising expectations that fundraising expectations the organization has. Previously, board members were not expected and seldom asked to participate in fundraising. However, it often is a critical requirement, and often nonprofits are asking this of their directors. Grant makers want to ensure the organizations they choose to fund have boards that are aligned with their missions before they commit to funding them. Importantly, the nonprofit's executive director should be able to demonstrate 100% commitment from the board, as evidenced by the number of directors who have made direct or indirect financial contributions. Therefore, it is important to be direct with the prospective board members regarding fundraising expectations. Don't compromise on the quality of the board. The new board of directors should reflect the communities they're serving and have strong ties to that community. Diversity is all that all that matters should be reflected, such as age, gender, race, religion, occupation, skills, professions, and backgrounds. Above all else, new board members need to be ready and willing to roll up their sleeves and work. A few little bit more legal information and obligations for potential future board members. It is important that new members be aware that they have three primary duties: duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. The duty of care means to take care of the nonprofit by ensuring prudent use of all the assets, including facility, people, and goodwill. Duty of loyalty ensures that the nonprofit's activities and transactions are first and foremost advancing its mission. Recognize and disclose conflicts of interest. Make decisions that are in the best interest of the nonprofit organization and not in the best interest of the individual board member or any other individual or for-profit entity. Duty of obedience means to ensure that the nonprofit obeys applicable laws and regulations, follows its own bylaws, and that the nonprofit adheres to its stated corporate purposes and mission. And finally, professional organizations that because it's critical for a board of a nonprofit and their board members to evaluate performance and measure outcomes. Listed below are a few tools and resources that are available. One is a tool, the Data Playbook, Logic Model Development Guide, and then another website where that discusses and shows how to measure outcomes. And then in the state of Vermont, our state of evaluation can be found, as well as a great deal of other information on the Common Good of Vermont website. Another one that provides statistics is the National Center for Charitable Statistics. And then there's the National Council of Nonprofits, which has an abundance of resources. And that's it.